Hi, I'm Jeffrey. Welcome to AutoAlchemy, the intersection between typology and self-growth. What if I told you that logic isn't all that it's cracked up to be? More on that soon. For a large part of my life, I've been obsessed with the idea of logical consistency. For anything that I believed, I would try to ensure that that belief squared with my other beliefs. For example, if I thought that free will didn't exist, then I would ask myself if I had any logical justification for believing in morality at all. If people don't have any choice about their actions, then where does our notion of moral responsibility come from? Just as one example. And look, I'm not saying that I've already made an awesome video on free will that you can watch right up there, but if I did, you would have no choice but to check it out. Basically, I think that need for logical consistency had something to do with not being burned by falsehoods. And I can think of some concrete examples from my childhood where that was definitely an issue, where I believed something wholeheartedly that wasn't true, and as a result of giving my credence to that particular belief, I was just knocked over by a tidal wave after the fact. And so as a defense mechanism, I started to rely on my introverted thinking to make sure that at the very least I didn't believe anything contradictory. You can also think of logical consistency in relationship to something like geometry. In Euclidean geometry, which is the geometry that we all studied in school, you basically start with these 5 basic axioms, these building blocks, and from just these basic propositions you can derive an entire system of geometry. And so when I was younger, I believed that anything meaningful had to work in the same way. Joy, meaning, love. I wanted them all to be constructed on self-evident logical foundations, or I would just get rid of them. I would say, oh, these have to be inherently contradictory, and I would try to sweep them under the rug. I'm guessing you can already see some of the problems here. First of all, logical consistency isn't enough. Plenty of things can be consistent without being true. Check this out. All human beings exist. Santa Claus is a human being. Therefore, Santa Claus exists. What that example demonstrates is that consistency is only a relationship between a set of propositions or ideas. They can be consistent with one another, they can cohere with one another. If you want to step forward into the territory of what's true, then you need the additional layer of coherence with reality itself. Another problem with this overwhelming need for logical consistency is that logic has this built-in rigidity to it. Traditional logic is a little too verbal, it's too concerned with language and definitions. You can find yourself lost in a labyrinth of words without really touching reality. And over time, I've come to realize that the world itself is way too dynamic and in motion and alive. It's a process, and that process can't neatly fit into the logical categories that we want to push it into. The philosopher Richard Rorty pointed out that language fails to really map onto reality at all outside of simple statements like, the cat is on the mat. With a statement like that, you can actually look at a tangible cat, you can look at a tangible mat, and verify what you're saying. And even then, you can kind of lose yourself in philosophical nitpicking. Maybe half of the cat is hanging off of the mat. Maybe there is some definitional disagreement about what qualifies as a cat. Scoob, like what even is a cat, man? But we really run into trouble whenever we veer into abstract territory. Socrates once said, education is the kindling of a flame, not the filling of a vessel. So, try to point to something in your room that will immediately verify that statement. You can't do it, and yet I still believe it somehow, even though I don't have this robust, logical Lego tower to defend it. Now, don't get me wrong, I do think that consistency is worth paying attention to, and it's something to strive for, but I don't think it's ultimately achievable, and it's not really as straightforward or as simple as we want it to be. I also think that you can talk yourself into some really weird corners in a quest to weed out contradictions. For example, I once had a philosophy professor who would say things like, well, I don't know, do I love my son? And unfortunately, I can relate to that line of thinking. I've tried to talk myself out of loving people who are important to me because I couldn't see a good reason to love them. When my hyper-rational worldview indicated that I needed to abandon my belief in love, that's what I did, but that never stopped me from swiping right. I guess what I'm really trying to say here is that if you have the wrong approach to contradiction, then you can end up brushing aside beliefs that have vitality to them, that have life to them. Fighting contradiction at all costs can make you really fragmented. You might think that you've resolved the issue with your words and your word brain, but then in your day-to-day life, you're still acting out the belief that love exists, for example, and that it's worthwhile. To me, the better approach seems to be to cultivate contradictions wherever you find them. By all means, shine a light on them, question them, but then give them space and acknowledge that all of our beliefs are aiming at something, even if they're doing it poorly. All of our beliefs are trying to meet this human need or that human need. We are complicated beings with various voices and various perspectives in our psyche, some of which we're not even acquainted with. I think that our contradictory and paradoxical beliefs are one way of accessing these parts of our psyche and getting to know them better. Instead of abandoning one conflicting belief for another, try to sit in that tension and see if you can reconcile the two, and see if there's a third perspective that emerges that can transcend them both and meet both of their needs. Which I'm hoping is what I've done with this video, actually. This video is intended to reconcile my need for consistency with my need to be a fully fleshed out human being. Because the drive to make everything consistent and fit together is, from another lens, the same thing as the drive for wholeness, which means acknowledging that everything has its place, including logic. It's not the weapon that I always need to go to, nor should you. But that's all I have to say about that. What do you guys think? Am I a madman? Are you a madman? Do you need help? What's going on? Talk to me. Thank you guys for tuning in, for liking, commenting, and subscribing. I'll catch you guys next time.